Violence. Okay, that's the AMG. Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and thanks to my friends at Mercedes-Benz in Milwaukee, I've been fortunate enough to spend the day with Mercedes' new GLC63 AMG. It is their compact, almost 700 horsepower, fire-spitting AMG with a little bit of a twist underneath the hood. So today, I'm going to walk you around the 15 things that you need to know about the new GLC63. Let's get into it. Now, before we dive into the big stuff, we're going to cover some of the funky little odds and ends that you might not otherwise notice. And in more modern fashion, we've replaced the three-pointed star on the hood of AMGs with the affalterbach logo, which looks very cool indeed. Of course, we'll get the hood open because there's something else that I have to show you. Now, it's a 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid, and we will get to that, I promise. But you can tell that it is a true AMG because it does have the hand-signed, handcrafted plaque on the engine cover. We've also got an enormous Garrett turbocharger, and again, we'll get to a lot of this stuff later on. But it's still an AMG, still straight up, still hand-built in affalterbach. And one of my favorite things about Mercedes is this little logo here on the back trunk. This hides your reverse camera under there, if you can see that. It also functions as your trunk release, but the camera thing is pretty cool. And since this is a true AMG, we do have performance pages so you can see your energy flow, which is especially prudent when you've got something like a plug-in hybrid. Again, I promise we'll get to it, but we can see everything from shocks and rebounds, steering angle, active telemetry, power and output from your rear motor, and of course vehicle dynamics, things we talked about before, steering angle, active telemetry with brake and horsepower output, and of course your IWC Schaffhausen that also functions as a lap timer. But on an entirely different vibe, you also have an off-road page. Now, I don't know who was going to off-road their $100,000 GLC63 hardcore performance AMG, but apparently you can. Again, compass, altimeter is somewhere around here, but you do have drive angle and all sorts of stuff here. Coordinates, temperatures, engine data. I mean, pretty robust stuff, and you can get all of this stuff in your head-up display too. So, pretty robust off-road suite for something like this. But one of my favorite things about all AMGs, and Mercedes I guess in general, is the ambient light. Now, of course, like a typical car, you'd have a monochrome or a single color orientation that you can get, but there's also different effects. So when I do things like make my climate warmer, I can get red in the actual vent, and when I make it cooler, it'll actually glow blue in the vent. And if I'm doing it on the passenger side, it'll just be those vents. If I'm doing it on the driver's side, it'll just be these vents. Really, really cool. But Mercedes still takes it another step further. You've got a multi-color situation here, so you can see really, really bright and vivid colors. It's gonna be really hard to see today because it is a sunny day, but you've got Miami Rose, Malibu Sunset, some of my favorites, Burning Blue. I mean, just really, really intoxicating looking at night, really puts it over the top. In typical Mercedes fashion, you also still have Burmester audio, which sounds the business. And we have red seatbelts to match the rest of our red accenting throughout the car. So with the red ambient lighting, this could be very red and black performance themed indeed. And we're used to seeing this little box here now. This is your biometric or fingerprint reader, and you can actually custom set driver profiles, steering wheel position, seating position, radio controls, temperature control, all sorts of stuff. You can set it with your fingerprint. Very, very cool. And when you open up your center console here, you see you do have cup holders. It's got a little graduating kickstand so you can fit even larger bottles here, and this kind of goes away. So if you need more space or something oblong shaped, you can put it here. But if you want to put a second water bottle in here, you simply push it down and then the rest of the cup holder spins out. This also houses your wireless charger. If your battery goes dead in your key, you can put it there, and you've got some USB-C chargers under here. And who doesn't love an AMG steering wheel, especially with all this carbon fiber here? But again, we'll talk about drive modes. Now there's a bunch here. Of course, we've got things as hardcore as a race mode, and you've got your AMG dynamics. You can go into master dynamics. Now I'm telling the car that I'm a master driver, as I am, of course. We've got Sport Plus, Sport, Comfort, fully electric mode, and we'll get to some of the plug-in hybrid stuff in a minute, but we're covering some of the odds and ends. We've got a battery hold mode, so it'll keep the charge in the battery and help recharge the battery as you're driving along if you want to save the battery for, I don't know, if you live in Europe and you need to get downtown and they don't like people using their gas engines. You've also got a customizable individual mode and a snow mode. So plenty of different drive modes and plenty of customizations going on under the skin here to make this thing as personal as possible. All right, well, zooming back out, let's talk about what this thing is and what it competes against. Let's start back up at the top. Now, this GLC63 is the most hardcore AMG-ified performance version of Mercedes compact GLC, one of their best sellers. It competes against things like an X3M competition, kind of, a Stelvio Quadrifoglio, which I think is dead now, and a Porsche Macan GTS, again, kind of, and we'll cover what I mean by kind of as we go through the video here. And then we'll come under the hood to talk about the powertrain. See, I promised we'd get back to it. Now, the headline figure is 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with plug-in hybrid, but there's a lot going on, so hang with me here. It makes 671 total horsepower, 752 total pound-feet of torque, and it does 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds. If you take away all the electric and hybrid stuff going on and just look at the 2-liter turbo, this is the most powerful 4-cylinder in the world. You get 469 horsepower from just the engine itself. Now let's add all the hybrid and battery stuff back in and talk about that. Now, we do have a plug-in hybrid, which means we have a slightly bigger 6 kilowatt-hour battery, which the EPA says is good for 1 mile of range. Not exactly. What people have been getting in the real world is somewhere closer to like 5 to 10, maybe around almost 8 miles of range. Obviously, for that little amount of range, you're probably not going to end up plugging it in, although you can on the driver's side rear fender back here. But you have several different drive modes in the cabin, as we saw, that will end up charging this thing itself. Especially if you're driving hard, it will recharge the battery. But it's nice to have a larger 6 kilowatt-hour battery, especially if you need to, I don't know, go to the airport super early in the morning. You don't want to wake up your wife or kids or anything like that. Also, maybe if you need to get, garbage bins out of your garage without really wanting to heat cycle the engine, you can do stuff like that. But it is a plug-in hybrid, not tuned for efficiency or range. That's going to be the GLC350E. This is tuned for performance, as that almost 700 horsepower number might suggest, and over 750 pound-feet of torque. When it comes to fuel economy with a plug-in hybrid, it's really hard to tell. It really depends on how often you're plugging it in or charging it or not plugging it in, but the EPA says you're going to get about 20 miles per gallon. But then going from that powertrain and talking about the drivetrain, where does the power go? Well, it goes through Mercedes-AMG's 9-speed multi-clutch transmission. I always love the 9-speed MCT in these AMGs. There's so much drama, and we'll talk about that when we go for a drive at the end of the video. But then the power goes to all 4 wheels. It's 4MATIC's really clever mechanical all-wheel drive system, which means you can send up to 100% of the power just to the rear and up to 50% to the front if you want. But I say clever because there's a lot going on. Your rear axle is where the 200 horsepower E-motor is housed, and that E-motor has its own 2-speed transmission, so there's 11 speeds between the two. We also have active ride control as optional here with 48-volt sway bars, and we've got some rear steer, and we've got an LSD out back. It handles and grips like crazy. It's about 5,100 pounds, and with these Michelin Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires, it really boogies. And we'll talk again a little bit more about that later on. But the dynamics here are shockingly good for something at 5,100 pounds and in an SUV shape. And then when it comes to styling, our tester here, thanks to Mercedes-Benz Milwaukee again, is draped in a beautiful manufacturer graphite gray Magno paint with the night package. So this is as blacked out can be, and it does look menacing. We've got double diode headlights that look pretty aggressive, and an embellished lower fascia for our 63 here. It looks fairly familiar to the GLC43, but maybe just a little bit tougher. And around the side, some sweet new AMG wheels. They're satin black finish with the silver rim and the silver center lock AMG design. I always love these black wheels from AMG. They look fantastic. These are 21s, again, wrapped in the Michelin Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires, but we've got 265s up front here and 295s in the rear, and we've got our red AMG brake calipers peeking out from underneath, again, going in tandem with those red seat belts and that red stitching on the interior. We, of course, in typical fashion, have our Turbo E-Performance front fender badge that you see on pretty much every AMG these days, but the profile is an aggressive coupe shape. You can get the full roof one, but the coupe does give a little something, I suppose. Your rear fender on your passenger side houses your fuel door, and on the driver's side is your charge door. And then you have an incredibly aggressive rear lip spoiler. You've got red accented rear badging that says GLC63S, but the AMG logo on the left is just kind of the dark chrome or Vader chrome accented. We've got a faux full width tail bar, but it does look clean and aggressive, this rear design. I have to say I do like it. And we've got classic rhombus shaped AMG quad exhaust tips. I gotta say, this is an aggressive looking SUV, and it's definitely helped by this spec that we have here. And then we'll press one of my favorite buttons on the outside here to get the trunk to kind of silently whir itself out of the way. Now we do have a couple buttons here for close and lock, which is really nice to have. We've also got kick gesture, as you can see here. But with the seats up, we're looking at about 16.6 cubic feet of space, or at least we would be in the long roofed version of this. But the coupified roofline is going to cut into your cargo space a little tiny bit. But what we do have here is also about 5 cubic feet of space less than we would have in a non-plug-in GLC. In the normal GLC300 with its mild hybrid, we'd have about 5 more cubic feet of space because the floor would be a little bit lower than what we have here, because we have to have somewhere for our big 6 kilowatt hour battery to live, and it lives under the floor here. There's a tiny little access area here. Maybe you could fit some really small items down here, but most of the time you're probably just going to use the clever little storage pockets over here. The grocery bag hanger is a really thoughtful touch, 12 volt. We've got a button here to release the seats. We've got another grocery bag hanger here, a little strap. I really like that strap for some reason, but I don't know, I just do. And then with the seats folded, you'd be looking at about 54 cubic feet of space, again, in the long roof line. In our coupe, it'll be a little bit less, but again, it's really only going to impact you if you're stacking things up at the very end of the trunk high up. So overall, a nice and practical space. The seats fold 40, 20, 40, so you can put this middle seat down and run longer items, skis and things like that, up through the cabin. And then we'll go up the cabin into the rear seats. Door card, really nice leather. We're gonna have some accented ambient lighting through here, Burmester tweeter right here, and then kind of a knurled metallic finish here for your floating door pillar. Really kind of like that. Looking at the space itself, it's big enough, not huge. I'm gonna put this up for a second, but we do have a new titanium interior, I believe. This is like a dark gray, really nice, kind of suede with some red accenting. Again, the red seat belts even continue into the back seat. Now I'm gonna step in at 6'1", to give you an idea, and this seat is maybe a little bit artificially far back, so knee room I'm actually okay. I've got about 2, maybe 3 inches of knee room, so I could sit back here pretty comfortably. And even for a coupe, headroom isn't terrible. It's not great. I'm brushing my hair a little bit on the roof, but it's really actually not bad. Again, I'm 6'1", fairly long torso, but then when we come to the actual features here, we've got dual vents back here, no zone, and then no chargers, which is a little bit of a weird thing to not have chargers down here. You can also see where some of the ambient lighting is going to accent through here, but we also have a little bit of a panoramic-ish roof. In the longer roof line, since it doesn't start to taper back here, you would have an even bigger panoramic roof. But for this sexy kind of slopey coupified look, this is the price you pay, I guess, for a little bit less headroom and a little bit less panoramic roof. But again, for a 6-footer, I can actually fit back here and the seats are relatively comfortable in addition to looking cool. And when we go all the way up to the front seats, again, door card, really nice, accented ambient light from our panel here, pressure sensitive seat adjustments, heated and cooled seats. Again, titanium gray, a new interior option, bright red seat belts to match our red stitched interior with the affalterbach logo embossed in the headrest, red stitching, kind of hovering a little tiny bit here, AMG designation here, and then perforations for your heated and cooled seats. They're pretty comfortable. We don't have full-on massage, but we do have seat kinetics to kind of keep things moving a little bit. This is the more comfortable seat option. This is 100% what I would get. You can get a more aggressive seat option, but you also have this full carbon interior, which we'll talk about more, but look at this steering wheel. Flat bottom, carbon fiber down here, carbon fiber at the top, and then Alcantara or micro suede along the sides. And we started touching on it, so let's talk about the interior, the cabin experience as a whole. Now again, this new interior color combo with the dark gray, black suede, the red, everything looks really, really cool. I like that it's not just full black. It gives it another extra little dimension of expensiveness and just kind of some flair. But there's carbon fiber everywhere, across the dash, on your steering wheel, and everywhere except for your center console, which is noticeably just gloss black and not carbon fiber. If I were to own something like this, I think the first thing I would do would be to wrap that center gloss black console to match the carbon fiber. But there's just so much visual drama in classic AMG fashion, especially at night. I mean, this is, when you get into an interior of an AMG, especially something like this in this class, it certainly feels like your money went the furthest versus something like an Audi, versus something like a BMW, and probably even something like a Porsche as well. It just feels really special, really unique, and very intoxicating. It's not subtle, and that's the point. Another thing that AMG does really well is technology, maybe to a fault in the past, but we have a really robust head-up display that you can control here with your little center cluster here. We've got all these different orientations. Again, I told you we have an off-road setting for our head-up display, which seems a little unnecessary, but also kind of cool. We can turn it off. We can have a more minimal, more standard or classic, super sport, race, and then a full track pace. I'm assuming units, give you like your lap times and things like that. But we also can control our fully digital instrument cluster to an insane degree as well. A lot of the same stuff. So track pace, it'll show you your lap, your telemetry, your G meter. Super Sport, going to give you live telemetry. Sport, Classic, this is, you know, classic Mercedes for the last couple decades. Full map navigation, your Distronic adaptive driving suite and things like that. And again, an off-road setting for your full cluster. And of course, a service and maintenance warning area right there. So there's loads of stuff that you can do just from your center cluster and your head-up display. Over here, we also have stuff to control your Distronic, or whatever they're calling their adaptive driver assistance suite, which is very, very robust and very, very good. But over here is kind of the main event. This is your updated MBUX or MBUX system. We've got a more tablet-oriented screen. We've got a pull-down like you would see on your phone, but it's really sharp, really responsive to my touch. We've got our AMG performance pages, our off-road setting, a charge setting. Again, some of this stuff we've already showed you, but you can track, if you do plan on plugging this thing in, what that's going to look like. But we have our comfort screen here with our seat kinetics and our ambient lighting that we've talked about. We've got media controls, navigation, the whole thing, and we even have, all the way at the very end, our Vivaldi browser. So you can actually go on the internet and kind of play around from the center cluster of your screen here. We've got fantastic 360 cameras in classic Mercedes fashion. They do some of the best 360 cameras in the game along with BMW, but I think I might give the edge to Mercedes. And we even have a parking assistance feature here. So very, very robust safety, very, very robust technology suite, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, all of the usual stuff that you'd like to see here on your Mercedes. And before we get behind the wheel and go for a bit of a drive, let's talk about the almighty dollar, the price. Now a GLC63 starts at $86,000. Now that's fairly big money, but when you consider the competition that we talk about, a Porsche Macan GTS, that starts similar money, very similar money. An X3M competition isn't that far off, and both of those are down hundreds or almost hundreds of horsepower versus this thing. Now with all of our crazy paint and interior carbon fiber and things like that, we're testing at $108,000, $108,515 actually. So it's a lot of money, but there's so much car here. So let's get behind the wheel and talk about the philosophy and the driving experience a little bit in the GLC63. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. Car starts in electric mode, even if you're not in electric mode, which is nice if you're considerate of your neighbors, which I like to be. You don't have to, Hellcat owners. Violence! Okay, that's the AMG. That's the AMG that I like. Okay, so I know, I'm gonna simmer this down a bit so I can think. I know the big story here is no V8, and yes, I am kind of I love the V8. I love that the AMGs have like historically been like the thinking man's muscle car, and the fact that this is a turbo hybrid 4-cylinder 2-liter thing. On the surface of it, yeah, I have the same reaction that you do. I have the same reaction that the internet does. It's not my favorite thing. But then I showed up and kind of drove this thing, and as you can see, you know, 9-speed MCT, amazing downshifts. So fast. The shifts are so crisp, and it kind of sounds good. I'm gonna be real. Kind of sounds good. You can feel some of the differences in like the differences in torque coming, and you can tell exactly, you can identify where they're coming from. You feel immediate electric torque, and it's weird because auditorily, I'm hearing the turbo start to spool, but I'm getting torque before I know where in like the audio range I'm supposed to be getting torque. So there's a lot going on, and it's like a very theatrical experience. But just chilled out in comfort mode here on casual city streets. It rides well. This is one of the things that kind of the AMGs have struggled with in the past, and I guess the M cars more so, but like this is very refined. It's pretty quiet. I mean, you got Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires on, so there's that, but like it's pretty good on the road here. Heading to this right-hander. Pitch it in. Oh, incredible grip. It handles! It doesn't feel like 5,100 pounds. That thing just bit into that corner. Wow, okay, I was expecting a little bit of understeer and it was like, nar? Holy crap. This thing is way more dynamic than I was really expecting it to be. The sound drama is there. There's pop-pops and bang-bangs and all sorts of snap crackle pops from the 9-speed MCT. I love a 9-speed in an AMG. They're so much fun. There's exhaust noise, there's induction sound, there's turbo noise and flutter. It's fast, it's really sharp. Oh my god. It's fast, dude. Woof. The gears are a little tall. Second feels kind of tall, but like, oh, I'm giving this, mentally I'm giving this way more of a pass for not having a V8 than the C63. There's something about being in the GLC body, being in an SUV, the fact that it rides pretty decent, the fact that it's more of, it's just like more palatable to me. Like I'm not nearly as bothered that it doesn't have the V8 here than I was, in like a C63 or even the C43. So I guess this is my rambling way, as I flick it back down into comfort mode, of saying that it's very sharp, it's very dynamic, and it's fun. It still has theater to it. And also, let's talk about the hype, the plug-in thing. Now, EPA says 1 mile of range. It's more than that, realistically. I subscribe to the plug-in hybrid thing. I believe in the concept. I think there's proof of concept there. I don't think I'd probably really ever plug this thing in if I bought it. You don't have to. You just don't have to. Like, you drive it hard, which is fun and rewarding, and you should do it to have fun and enjoy this $108,000 thing that you bought. And then while you're driving it hard and braking, and the engine is then charging up the battery. It's only 6 kilowatt hours, so it's not huge. It's not tiny, but it's not huge. So, like, realistically, when you're, driving hard on a back road, through the canyons, on a track, the battery level kind of just stays there because you're constantly like recouping under braking and then deploying on the straights, and like you just don't really need to plug it in. Like I came out here and the battery had like a quarter of its life here, and while I was sitting there idling, it kind of burned down, and then the engine would charge it up. But like while I've been driving it here, it's kind of just hovered around half. So I've been driving around as we went past that stoplight. Then I flicked it back into comfort mode. I've just been chilling around here in EV. You can kind of hear it. 200 horsepower motor in the back there with a 2-speed transmission. So like, if you had a full charge on this and you just wanted to drive it around in electric mode, you could. Like, you really could. So, I don't know. I'm really impressed by this thing. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. So, and the lack of V8 thing doesn't really bother me as much. Sure, it's always cool to have a V8, but this thing has plenty of drama. It feels AMG, it feels really sharp, and I had a good time. So thank you to Mercedes-Benz of Milwaukee for letting me have a go. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.